Welcome to the Fort Collins Fellows Podcast, from Colorado State University to New Belgium Brewery, and the hundreds of miles of hiking and biking trails. Fort Collins has earned its well-deserved reputation as one of the top places to live in the United States. Join the fellas as they uncover the stories, places, and people that make Fort Collins so extraordinary.
Well, if you've bought flowers in northern Colorado, it is quite possible that you have bought them from this man. We are fortunate enough today to have on Tim Jordan, co-owner of Palmer Flower here in Fort Collins in northern Colorado. Tim, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Yes. Chris, have you bought flowers for your wife anytime lately?
Gosh, you're going to put me on a spot like that? Just start us off and throw me in the doghouse?
Yeah.
I know, but I will soon. Put it that way.
I buy flowers for my wife, not all the time, but definitely at least 2 to 3 times a year. And Palmer is the go-to. And they've been around forever. Tim, tell us about your journey so that folks can understand kind of who you are and how you became the owner of Palmer Flowers, among other businesses here in northern Colorado.
Yeah, my wife and I moved here to go to college in 2006 and loved CSU. I was selling cars at the time and working at Markley Motors. And I think a lot of us have this part of our story, but there was a guy on the car lot who put Rich Dad Poor Dad in my hand, and at like 18 years old, and it changed my life. 19, we bought our first house. 21, we bought our first business, which is SG Window Tint, a window tinting company here in northern Colorado and Denver. Yeah, we came from a family of serial entrepreneurs, but we quickly realized that we didn't want to work for somebody else. We wanted to work for ourselves. So my wife fell in love with accounting. I know that's weird, but she absolutely loves tax accounting. And
I thought you said fell in love with the county. She's like accounting. Okay.
Tax
I was
accounting. Yep.
Larimer County is gorgeous. I agree. It's very nice.
So she got a degree, master's CPA, CSU. I was kind of bouncing back and forth between the corporate world. I worked for an agricultural company. We sold seed and other inputs to farmers. I managed a sales staff there, so I learned a lot of sales technique and
Monsanto.
Yes.
I saw Monsanto.
Yeah. So kind of a dirty word. Definitely wasn't dirty to me. They were fantastic to me and my family. So, we were clipping along there. Loved owning the business. Didn't love the corporate aspect of having to move to grow, to climb the ladder. So decided we wanted to own other businesses. We bought our first flower shop, which is Palmer Flowers in Loveland, right at the corner of Eisenhower and Madison. We fell in love immediately. Awesome. And then we realized if we bought one more flower shop, I could move out of the corporate world, replace my income, and be a full-time entrepreneur. So we did that. We bought a flower shop in Boulder in 2013 that we no longer own. We sold it off. But yeah, we're content, having a good time, doing window tint and flowers. And I was just kind of jumping all around. Danielle was working at Keiko Isom as agricultural accountant. And then Spiro Palmer called. He actually had Michelle Adams.
I was going to ask you, how's it like working with Spiro every day? But go ahead.
Not every day. Spiro spends a bit, we were his exit strategy from the flower business. We see him when he's in town about 3 times a week, and he's awesome. Dude.
He's beauty. I just saw him the other day. That's it.
He's the best, man. So he's in Greece right now, though. But
no. Yeah, right. He's in Greece. I was thinking, never mind. I'm losing. I got a 7-month-old baby, Tim.
Yeah, so he had Michelle Adams, who's now my partner, call and set up a meeting with me because he was going to open a flower shop right next door to my flower shop in Loveland as competition. That was their next move for expansion. So I took the meeting, didn't really know what to expect. He flipped halfway through the conversation and decided that he wanted to merge with us, and he wanted us being Danielle and I, be his exit strategy, basically. So that was in early 2014. We weren't super keen on the idea. We were kind of content where we were at the time. It was a big move. We had 20 employees. He had 60 employees. So together we were going to have 80, 85 people. So it took him a couple months to convince us to do it, but eventually we did. So we did what was a leverage buyout and a merger at the beginning of 2015. It was really complicated, but in a great way, because he had just started an employee ownership model at the beginning of 2014. So we had to kind of reconfigure that model and make plans for growth of it. So that was, 8 years ago now almost. And it's been awesome. We're up to 110 employees. We have 10 employee owners. That model has worked phenomenally well for us. I've learned a ton along the way. Working with Spiro is awesome. We've come to realize that he's a generous man who does business the right way and represents a lot of what Fort Collins and Northern Colorado is. And it has imparted like this one of the most important things is continuing on that legacy because his name is literally on the side of the building that we operate. So I talk a lot about that because it is super important to me.
No, that's interesting because a few things that I'm going to have to take you out to have a beer with because I'd love to, give some ownership of my company to my employees and sometime in the near future. And also when I started my business, threw my name on there and I'm like, well, shoot, guess if I either want out, I've got to rebrand or give it, succession plan as my kids. So, but I'm also curious because I thought about, with Palmer's and everything like that. It's a very prominent name here in Fort Collins. Talk to us a little bit about in 2014. I mean, Palmer's been around forever. It's a flower shop. What has stayed the same and what has changed since you guys have taken over?
Yeah, so I would say what has stayed the same is a lot of the operational, like the operational foundation. Internally, it's been called the Palmer Way for nearly 50 years. It's just excellence, right? We're buying the best product internationally, literally the best product in the world in our industry. We have the most talented designers in Colorado, and our customer service is, we will almost go to no ends, almost to a detriment to provide, excellent customer service. So that foundation, those foundational pieces that Spiro created, I guess I should add to that, focusing not only on our community as a key portion, but also our team, like thinking of our internal client just as important as our external client. Spiro was very good at that. Michelle Adams, who I referenced a couple of times, she's only ever worked for Spiro because of that kind of mentality. So we have tried to maintain that to the best of our ability. Yeah, what has changed is obviously technologically, Spiro did a really great job at trying to keep Palmer Flowers as relevant technologically as possible. But I mean, he's in his mid-60s. He's a green immigrant who doesn't speak English. He had these disadvantages, these natural disadvantages to that. So we had to be very slow about it at the beginning because we were still earning trust from the other partners as well as the other employees. But we've obviously updated our technology and are trying to instill the concept that we continually update. We don't just update it and sit on it for a decade. We are always updating it every day. So there's a big piece of that. Also, the business is very kind of fluid. We do our best to not sink our feet in cement. We're constantly changing or tweaking strategies. Our wedding department is the best example of that. So when we came into the business, wedding flowers, no retail florist wanted to do wedding flowers. High labor, difficult customers. There's all these issues with it. It was changing rapidly with Pinterest and Instagram. So there was this big divesting from baby boomer ran florists. So we flipped that on its head. We created a strategy for each of our stores to invest in weddings because for me, summers are really poor cash flow time of the business for florists. That's when all the weddings are. So it seemed obvious to me to try and increase that cash flow from that perspective, that valuable timed cash flow. So we created a strategy with kind of a boutique brand underneath our umbrella, worked really well for a period of time, grew the business, probably threefold basically.
How many stores do you have right now, Tim?
Four.
You got four. Okay.
Yeah. And so grew it threefold, but then it got too big, especially our location in Loveland. We have a rock star partner there who became basically famous for her wedding design. She had a consultant who's probably the best consultant in the state, maybe the region, and they got too big for the facility. So we had to completely rebrand that entire department, rolled all of the weddings from being done from all the separate stores into one department, get them space, get them meeting space, reorganize their technology. We want to do things like that. We want to constantly be changing. So that's probably the other big change is we are not thinking linearly. We are thinking with as many tangents and going in as many continuous improvement directions as possible.
Tim, you mentioned, like any business, you start any business, the product has got to be really good. Else it's just not going to survive no matter how great your marketing is or customer service. Talk about, you mentioned the best flowers in the world, and where do you guys get them? Like, where do they come from? I'd be curious where you guys, like what wholesalers or what that, I guess, supply chain looks like?
It's a very complex supply chain. Probably what I know best about the industry, just because I've invested so much of my time and energy from it.
Yeah.
So 83% of the fresh flowers sold in the United States are imported from Ecuador, Colombia, Kenya, and Holland.
Really? Wow.
Yep. So they're flown daily, traditionally into the port of Miami, not 100%, but traditionally into the port of Miami. Then there's a network brokers there that distribute that product across the nation on refrigerated trucks. So you can get almost anything through that market. We have a more localized strategy. So that's only equates to about 40% of our product. There are things like roses, hydrangea, daisies, and carnations that the slopes and the warm days, cool nights of Ecuador and Colombia are basically irreplaceable. There's nowhere else in the world that you can get that rose exactly the same size, exactly the same petal counts, 365 days a year. So that's what we get out of Miami. And another 40% of our product is coming out of California. So there is a pretty large grower network along the entire state of California to maximize the growing season from north to south. Those are farm direct. So we work with literally the farmers of the flowers, and they have a network to get the product to a centralized shipping hub that we get 1 to 2 times a week. But we love those people. We know them personally. We go visit them every couple of years. We love those people and love to support them. So
you don't happen to work, Native Sons, San Luis Obispo, do you?
I don't. That doesn't ring a bell, but there is a network of really, really small growers that they have 1 or 2 brokers out of California that they kind of consolidate.
Gotcha.
So if they're a smaller grower, they may be a part of that network.
The only reason I say is because it was my dad's best man at his wedding, my parents' wedding. And
Nice.
So real quick story. So he teaches at San Luis Obispo College. In fact, he did the entire grounds of the Apple campus in Cupertino. And they were trying to find a local farmer in California to do it. And he's like, I don't want to. And they go, no. They're like, Dave, you got to do it. Dave's like, I'll bid 5%. I'll do 5% of the project. And they came back and literally they just wrote him a check and goes, you're doing the whole thing.
Nice. That's awesome.
And Dave is the most unassuming guy, but that's what I was curious. I was like, I thought of him when you were talking about those local growers, but that's amazing. Colombia, Ecuador, Holland.
Yeah. And a huge increase in Colorado grown flowers, which is actually a reversion. In 1970s, Colorado was the carnation and rose capital of the world, how Ecuador and Colombia is now. But greenhouse space got so much more expensive that it got moved internationally. But there's this reversion to these micro growers all across Fort Collins that you'll see them at like farmers markets and stuff like that. And that popularity has grown so much. We're buying a tremendous amount of our products from them.
That's awesome.
At this point. But yeah, so one of the biggest challenges, so we buy direct from all those people that I just described to you. Usually there's a second layer in the supply chain, a local wholesaler out of Denver that will buy from those people, and then smaller florists will buy from them. I mean, they're one of their largest customers in the state, even with the small amount of percentage business that we give them. But one of the biggest improvements in our business to date, and it happened about 6 months ago, is all of that product was coming in on these trucking lines, and the only place the trucks stopped was Denver. So there was a local kind of co-op, technically they're a for-profit business, but local co-op type of operation that would receive your pallets and hold them for you until you drove down and picked them up. The whole state, that's how the state got their product, other than huge wholesalers that are buying, at this big level. But our business grew enough to now the semi-truck stops 2 places, one in Fort Collins at our dock and one in Denver. We were spending so much money driving back and forth to Denver, sometimes 6, 7, 8 days, times a week. It's been huge improvement. When we show up on Saturday and Thursday mornings, all of our products just sitting in our dock on 4 or 5 pallets. So that has changed the supply chain dramatically for us.
Wow.
Seriously. Question for you. So you come from a family of serial entrepreneurs. You yourself, serial entrepreneur, own different businesses, see opportunities within your business, kind of with the wedding that you rebranded and within Palmer. I would think one of the things, and with 100 employees, how do you see the labor market in Fort Collins, Northern Colorado, being such a large employer and needing to get the top floral designers and all the way down to drive labor, which maybe now is not necessarily a necessity, but how are you able to kind of overcome maybe a lack of labor or pay and things of that nature?
Yeah, it's a multifaceted strategy and one of the hardest things to do in this market. One big investment and improvement we made on that front was hiring a cultural coordinator, basically an HR person that doesn't think about, they're not doing the payroll portion of HR. They're doing the, how do we attract people to this organization and then keep them happy while they're here portion of HR. So that's helped tremendously. From a 30,000 foot view, going back to something we talked about a little bit earlier, being employee owned helps a lot. Not that that's something that we market outbound because we are kind of selective. In our current format, we're selective about who has the opportunity to become partners, though hoping to have that change at some point in the future. But less so marketing that fact, more so our employee owners keep us intently focused on culture. Before the last 2 or 3 years where culture has been a buzzword, the last 10 years, I mean, they help make all of the highest level decisions at the organization. So they have had us intently focused on a positive workspace for the past decade, basically. So just providing a place where people not only want to come to, but want to stay at, I think is the most important. I think people get a little bit hung up on the hiring portion of that discussion and should spend more time focused on the retention portion of that discussion. We have one advantage that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, and that is people want to work at flower shops. It's a fun place to work. It smells good. It's pretty. It's creative. It's, all these things. So we do have that advantage to attracting people. But now we have a huge disadvantage on the pay scale side of things. I mean, we're a retailer. We, have all of the issues that every retail restaurant has when it comes to payroll. And that's one of those things that we have to know our boundaries and we have to set those boundaries, but constantly address them, right? We constantly have to consider, okay, sure, maybe last year we couldn't afford this rate or this position or this type of thing, but can we today? And how can we if we absolutely have to? So I will say across the board, our employees are underpaid for their talent, but that's a discussion that we take head on and want to improve every single day possible.
Tim, do you think the
culture? Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just gonna say, do you think the growth in Northern Colorado, Fort Collins, like as a business owner in Fort Collins, I'm assuming you support that? I mean, you have more people, to fill spots, to fill jobs, more customers, because growth in Northern Colorado can be a touchy subject depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, I guess maybe I think about it too simplistically, but I want more people in Northern Colorado.
No, I think, so do I.
Right. I mean, from business, from culture, from real estate value. I mean, I don't see much of a detractor in I'm also a believer that that's a free market thing, right? So if the cooler and better place that Fort Collins is for me and my family to live in, the more people will want to live here. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is dramatically undervalued when people talk about pay scale is culture. And I think if you with you cultivating that intentionally, people are open to taking, a lesser salary if they enjoy where they go to work on a daily basis and where clients come in. And generally speaking, I'm sure maybe there's some funeral flowers that you guys, sell, but generally speaking, anniversaries, birthdays, Valentine's Days, Mother's Days, all of those fun times where people are excited to come in and get a gift for someone that they love. Generally speaking, I think, and what I found is that you don't necessarily have to be the highest paying if you have that culture that you've intentionally cultivated. So I think, you want to take care of your employees. There's also that side of they want to be at a place that they enjoy. And if you're stressed and not able to cultivate that culture, that's going to parlay through the rest of the company. And maybe that culture goes down and maybe they're paid higher, but the stress is a lot higher.
We see it all the time. We see people who wait for opportunities and, positively, obviously, and then come back, you hit the nail on the head. It's just undervalued. You have to provide that positive place for people to come to work. I've found as my career has advanced, that's become the literally most important part about what I do is, yes, we need to make money, right? We all have to make money to put food on the table. But that is truly secondary. And maybe for the amount of time it takes up real estate in my brain, maybe a significant secondary thought. I just want people to have a place to work that they enjoy and to be happy when they walk through the doors.
Mm-hmm. Tim, how did you get into flowers? I mean, you got window tint. You've got a few companies. I just kind of want to go back real fast when you got involved. And I think you used to own Front Range Flowers. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's one of the entities that's owned by Palmer Flower Companies. It's a Q sub from a taxation and a legal perspective. It's the one that we established all of our payroll and so it's actually one of the main entities underneath Palmer Flower Companies. But we got into flowers. So first of all, we bootstrapped. I mean, I made good money selling cars, but there was no family money or anything of that nature.
Go to selling cars to selling flowers. I love it.
So we bootstrapped SBA notes. We've done 7 SBA notes. Shout out to Chris Burns. Chris Burns, vice president.
Yeah, I love Burns.
He met me when we were 19 or something and just believed Danielle and I did the first SBA loan for us. So we were looking for other opportunities. We're trying to buy gas stations and coin-op laundromats. You need a lot more capital than I had at that point in my life to do those things. So
that's so interesting.
The broker, and the other thing with gas stations that turned us off is the lack of value in the real estate because of contamination issues, obviously. But
gotcha.
Yeah, the broker we were working at the time was representing, it was Forever Flowers. It's now Palmer Flowers in Loveland. And he was showing us gas stations literally all over the state. And it's like, hey, man, you got to come check this flower shop out. The gross margin looks good. Nice little business. They just took a big price reduction. They really need to sell it. Plus, there's an option to purchase real estate if you would like to do that. So that was attracted to us. Yeah, and the numbers worked. And that owning that corner eventually, I mean, we didn't have the means at that time to do it, but 2 years later, we executed that option and purchased that corner. It was very attractive to us. But what's interesting is it was like 4 weeks after that, like it was kind of a mess. Like the gal was super nice, but had no technological investment. The orders were literally going on carbon copy papers, 3-sheet carbon copy papers. So that, from that perspective, it was a mess. But like the energy in the shop, we fell in love with, man. It took no time for us to realize that it was an industry we wanted to invest in.
That's cool.
So you went from that. Now talk to me. This is just more personal. I'm confused. Paul Wood Florist. What is that in relation to you? Totally separate? Was it at one point a part of the umbrella? They're in downtown. They've been there forever. And so, obviously Ike and Spiro and all that good stuff downtown.
Paul Wood is one of our 4 shops. So it's owned by Palmer Flower Company. It's ran by Sue Charles. She's been a general manager since the 80s. She's one of our partners. She's just an amazing individual and well known in the downtown community. Here's the reality. Paul Wood was founded in 1933. It was founded, in the Depression. It's one of the oldest retailers in Old Town Fort Collins. We can't change the name of it. And nor do we want to. It's a staple. In fact, it just had its 90-year anniversary. I met with Paul Wood's grandsons and talked a lot about the history and just kind of celebrated that with them. So we believe that it has this unbelievably strong past, but also the person who bought it from the Woods, she was one tier from the Woods, but her name's Judy Boggs. She runs the Front Range Floral Design program, Front Range Community College Floral Design program. She's one of the most crucial and influential people in Northern Colorado floriculture. She's trained basically a whole generation of floral designers. You put her next to Spiro Palmer and Michelle Adams and a few of these other people. They are our industry. They've built and supported that industry. So it's not just like 1933 past. Judy owned that shop for 40 years and has done amazing things for our industry. And we feel a little bit legacy responsible there also.
Tim, do you do, Patrick and I, we interviewed Mike Calhoun, who was director of parks a few episodes ago, and the Ron Swanson of Fort Collins, you may want to call him. But anyways, do you do any work with the city of Fort Collins, like the flower displays that they have around Old Town, anything like that?
No, we don't do much in the way of gardening, exterior, or bedding plants.
Okay.
There was a time when Palmer Flowers did, but our focus is cut flowers.
Okay.
It's 2 different skill sets, basically.
Yeah. What about CSU? Do you guys do any work with CSU at all? Or is that kind of...
Ton.
Okay.
Yeah. Of all types. wholesale flowers for teaching in their floriculture program to all the commencement flowers,
Gotcha.
to individual small things.
Oh, that's
They're amazing.
It's amazing how just far-reaching of an impact CSU has throughout the community, and
so true,
many
Patrick.
different industries and things that you just wouldn't think about that help the economy, flourish. I mean, I don't know what percentage of business, if it even is a per se, but it's got to be phenomenal client to have that you can rely on a recurring revenue of sorts from them on an annual basis.
Well, I've heard basically that exact same thing come out of Spiro Palmer's mouth. I mean, he believed in CSU since he came here from Greece.
Yeah.
And speaking of Greece, you just went, and so you said you visited Spiro in Greece with the family?
He wasn't there. We stayed on the island that he's from at his house. He was gracious enough to let us spend some time there. Got to meet some of his friends and family members and stuff like that. So super, super awesome. He's from the island of Lefkada, which is very difficult to get to because it's a 5-hour bus ride from Athens. So no Westerners, no Western European, no Americans really at all while we were there.
Nice.
We don't need to talk about my vacation, but this kind of informs a little bit about Spiro. The thing I was stricken the most with is how all the wonderful locals there really seemingly have no idea how spectacular it is from a beauty perspective. We've been all over the world in those types of environments. It's one of the prettiest places I've ever seen, and they have no idea. It's just home.
I think I saw Jimmy Palmer posted something last night. They're having dinner at some just gorgeous sunset view. I'm like, look at these guys over here. But
I think it's pretty telling about Fort Collins in Northern Colorado, the desire to be successful, and the person who sold you the company still a big mentor of yours, wanting to see your success. And I don't know if there's any financial incentive still for him or not, but from an outsider's perspective, it just looks like you've taken over this legacy name where Palmer's in Fort Collins, they're when it gets down to it, Fort Collins is still a young community, and there was probably, 15 to 20 really big change makers over the last 100 years here, and Palmer's would have to be considered one of them. And you're, at the kind of helm steering a very important ship with their name on it. And talk to us a little bit about how that's important to you, Fort Collins, the legacy of Fort Collins, and maintaining that.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And it's not just optics. Spiro is a great individual, is a great person, is still involved here. He comes in for free. I mean, designs all of our rose arrangements many of our rose arrangements for Valentine's Day just because he loves it. He loves being a part of it. So yeah, it's not optics. To me, I take very seriously what he has meant to this community. He believes, and I believe that he's basically the American dream, right? He's an immigrant who had tremendous success in this wonderful place, and he's told me that before. And I never really thought about how Fort Collins can facilitate this amazing life. I mean, he's from one of the prettiest places in the world, I just told you, and he chooses to make Fort Collins his primary home, So to me, that's super important. I'm raising a family. I have a 9-year-old daughter. My wife, obviously, here. We live in Midtown Fort Collins. Fort Collins is just this phenomenal community that mixes family friendliness with fun and excitement, right? Whether that's a brewery or Horsetooth or what have you, athletic events with culture. We also have amazing culture here with the theater and with what Stryker's done from a musical perspective. So I think it's the perfect place to raise a family. I want to live here the rest of my life. So I've come to think of Palmer Flowers as a bit less of this profit center that's making money for its owners and a bit more of utility for our community. Our community has to have fresh cut flowers for all different types of occasions. We obviously want to be their choice for it, but we also feel responsible for providing the very best choice in this amazing community for that. So that thought of what Fort Collins is and what we mean to Fort Collins has been completely integral to how we make decisions at our highest level of the organization.
I love it. Real quick, I want to make sure I have this note right. 1970s, Colorado was the rose capital of the world. Do I have that right?
Yeah, Rose and Carnation.
Rose and Carnation. I knew there was one other.
Yep. So
Carnation. That's it. All right.
Yeah. There's huge greenhouses that I think all grow cannabis now in Denver that were all built to grow roses and carnations.
Just no way.
It's evolution.
Good insider information, I think. Okay, so for people in Fort Collins, some insider tips on busy season, suggestions, what they can do to really make a stand. So for somebody like, I don't know, Chris, who hasn't bought their wife flowers in years.
I'm gonna go out right after this. Tim, I think one of your shops is right outside my office.
What can those partners do to really make a statement to their wives or significant others?
That's right.
Yeah, so summer is a great time to send flowers. You see a lot of like discounts. Like I said, it's a slower time in the everyday flower business for all of us. So it's a great time to do just like a just because thing and get some extra brownie points with the wife. Fall has probably the prettiest flowers of any season. Most, especially us, but most florists in Northern Colorado are going to have a huge selection of beautiful Fort Collins grown flowers. And that's the best time.
That's the local time right there.
Exactly. Fall. Yeah. Early fall. So that's a really great time also. But also our industry was and still kind of is super archaic from an access perspective. It's difficult to order from us compared to all of your other e-com opportunities.
Tim, I got to give you a shout out though for Mother's Day. It was, Chelsea's first Mother's Day this year, and we had relatives from outside the state deliver Palmer flowers to our front door. So I was just going to say, you guys did a great job.
And we're attacking that specific thing on a day in, day out basis. But there is industry infrastructure that has to be overcome from that perspective. But big improvements are things like DoorDash. You can order my product on DoorDash and get it within an hour. DoorDash has become a huge partner in the retail floral industry, and they're doing an amazing job with it.
Smart on DoorDash's part.
Yep. We developed a product because one issue we have is that the price is increasing ever aggressively. And that has a lot to do with the labor discussion that we had previously. There's very few talented floral designers in the world. We have to pay them well, and that number is going up constantly. Mm-hmm. So, but the price of what somebody's willing to pay for it just because in the summer, small arrangement isn't growing at that same rate. Right? So we developed We developed a product, we call it Bouquet Crate. It's a box. It's really pretty. It's this boxed bouquet product that transfers some of the value from the talented floral designer putting the arrange into the base. I can teach somebody to put this bouquet together and wrap it up in the box in 2 days, whereas it takes 2 years to become a skilled floral designer. So we've transferred a lot of that labor value into this box bouquet product, and we can offer it at a lower price. It's also much easier for me to deliver, much more resistant to weather. So that's a more attainable price point.
I like that because sometimes I will, just because, I'll send my wife. There's a little bit of an ego thing with it also, because I'll send her a shit ton of roses just randomly at work. And I just know that all of her coworkers see it. And I love the feeling that she gets feeling super special. But she has to then drive home with this awkward vase in her car. And I'm sure it's probably not very safe for driving while she's holding that thing and driving down the interstate. So that's a good alternative that still gets the job done.
Yeah. It's a proprietary box that I designed and developed over a 1.5 year period that I think we sold 1,400 of them last year, something crazy like that. It's going to be our highest volume product, primarily because of the price point, at some point over the next 2 to 3 years.
That's awesome. So I just got done buying my wife a bouquet of flowers. So she's going to let me go out with the boys and have a beer. And I don't know which patio I'm going to go have one on. But one of the things we ask a lot of our guests all of our guests, I should say, and we shared a beer at Tap and Handle not too long ago, but long enough to where we need to get out there again and do it. Where are you spending your Friday afternoon? What patio in Fort Collins, or what brewery are you going to go check out to have a beer?
Yeah, so I'm a Friday and Saturday afternoon at the brewery kind of guy, rain, snow, or shine. So a bit of a connoisseur there.
Ooh.
I spent the last couple of years being Funkworks was kind of top of the. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Stodgy last year.
I went to Stodgy this past weekend, Tim. I got to get Patrick. That place is rocking. Rocking.
But I would say this year, it took us a little while to catch on, but that back patio that they added at the Jessup Farm Barrel House is
that's
freaking amazing.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. So if you've been to the Barrel House at Jessup Farm, there was kind of this awkward space right when you walked in to the left inside.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
They turned that into a bar, so now you don't have to go upstairs.
Only a 2-seater or what? 'Cause yeah, it was like really tiny when I last went there.
A bunch of barrels flying around and everything like that.
Just serving, so you can't sit at that bar. So it's just serving out from the outside or the inside. You can get your beer, and they had the normal patio to the left there. But then if you wrap around, they made this like 6-tier terrace concrete patio with these beautiful umbrellas, big Adirondack chairs, tons of seating, and the concrete has like these. And if you look, it's all over Jessup Farm. It has these huge boulders that the campana set inset into the concrete all over the place. So my daughter loves like running up and down like all the different tiers. It's killer. We've been there the last 2 Fridays.
All right, I'm looking at it right now. I gotta put that back on my because they had just all those wine barrels when you used to walk in.
No, I love it. Those were kind of, I mean, Stodgy's been mentioned a couple of times. Funkworks maybe 1 or 2, but you know, your
not Jessup Farm
house is always Odell's, but love hearing Jessup Farm. That's the first time. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, the campanas built us a house a block down from Jessup Farm right before Jessup Farm opened. So we would walk there 3 times a week or so for the first 5 years that it was open. So we have a little bit of a soft spot for it.
Love it.
Well, I got to go get some flowers for my wife.
Yes.
So.
No, hey, if you bought a Mother's Day, that's not too bad. I was truly thinking it's like
it's never happened. So. Yeah.
You got a high bar for yourself, Chris. So I appreciate that.
But you know, I like that. You know, this is gonna. I'm gonna surprise her.
There is a little bit of extra brownie points from the just because flowers. You know,
just because flowers. That's right. I like that. The just because flowers.
I love it.
Cool.
I love it. Well,
Tim, thanks so much, man. This has been great.
Yeah, seriously. And if you guys are looking for the best flowers in Northern Colorado, obviously go check out Palmer Flowers.
Thanks, guys. I had a blast talking, chatting with you, and thanks for this content that you guys are pushing out. Northern Colorado is an amazing place, and love the support you guys are providing for it.
Very cool.
Thank you so much. Thank you.